Hey y'all, today I want to talk about how chasing success leads to failure and even unhappiness. When I was still a practicing full-time psychiatrist, I noticed that I worked with a couple of groups of patients who would come in and sort of chase particular things, and despite getting those things, they would still be unhappy. So one of these groups was the success Chad. So these were people that, would chase different kinds of stuff on the Sigma grind set. So I got to get promoted. I got to make more. I got to do one passive income stream, second passive income stream. And I noticed that these people were almost on this success treadmill where they would strive for something. They would actually achieve it, but they wouldn't actually be content afterward. And there was always something next. And on the flip side, I would work with people who were degenerate gamers. So these were people that weren't really striving for success, but they were still chasing something. They were sort of on this concept of the hedonistic treadmill where they would chase a particular thing, like I want to have fun, or I want to get high, or I want to eat good food. And despite the fact that they would play video games over and over and over again, they would never really be satisfied. So despite the fact that they were chasing this, they weren't actually becoming happy because of it. Hey y'all, I want to take a moment to thank the sponsor of today's video, Blinkist. Blinkist is an awesome app that helps you digest the most important information from over 5,500 nonfiction books and podcasts into 15 minutes. I'm currently using Blinkist to get through Sigmund Freud's interpretation of dreams. Now, the interpretation of dreams is a tome that anyone who's interested in mental health has to read. And I've tried to read it 3 times, but it's incredibly boring. And what I love about Blinkist is that it takes the tome and it distills it into blinks. And each blink is about a page long, and so it offers enough depth and context for me to really understand what Freud was trying to say. There's also another really cool feature which they just added called Blinkist Spaces. This is a place where you can invite other people to give you recommendations about which books you should check out. And I really like this because I've noticed that there's more and more fake reviews on the internet. So even 5-star reviews don't necessarily lead to things like good books. And I really like getting recommendations from people who know what I'm interested in, which is exactly what Spaces allows you to do. So it helps me be more efficient at selecting the right books and getting through those key points in a much more efficient manner. So if y'all are interested, they have an awesome promotion right now where you can get 20% off your monthly subscription. So please check out the link in the description below and sign up for Blinkist today. And thank you once again to Blinkist for sponsoring this video and making mental health content on the internet free. And when we sort of think about this, even as a psychiatrist, I used to think about these two groups of people as very different, right? The degenerate gamer who's chasing God knows what every day when they're on the computer, or the Sigma grind set person, this person who's working at an investment bank, or even a physician at Harvard Medical School. These were the people that I was working with, and we sort of think about these groups of people as different. But the more that I started working with them, the more that I realized there's actually this common shared pathway between both of these people. So when I started working with these people, especially the Sigma grind set folks, I sort of drew on my monk training, right? So they would come in and they'd say, Dr. K, I'm really unhappy with my life. I got promoted and I'm doing this, and no matter how much I achieve, I want more. And then I'd sort of channel monk mode, right? And I'm okay, let us understand that the problem with your life is that you want things. So you might just give up your desires, right? Give it up, and then you will be content. Your desires are controlling you. So this is pretty standard mindfulness sort of wisdom, right? Stop wanting and you will be happy. And frankly, these people were F that, bro. I don't want to actually give up my desires. I actually want to accomplish stuff, but I just wish that when I accomplish stuff, I would actually be content. And on the flip side with the degenerate gamers, I tell them, okay, the problem is that you are playing video games. You are playing too much. You need to stop. It is polluting your mind and ruining your brain and all these kinds of things. Just stop, bro. And they were yeah, I sort of get that, right? I know I should stop. I've tried to stop. It doesn't really work. Something just doesn't work. I can't just stop. So even the standard mindfulness approach of, hey, stop wanting things and you will be happy, that was unacceptable for those people. And if sacrificing your desires for the sake of your happiness, which you sort of theoretically know should work, is not something that you want to do, then this video is actually for you. Because working with these people, what I figured out is how can you actually continue to chase things, but actually be satisfied from them? And in order to understand this, let's kind of go through a general scenario and then dive into some neuroscience and then talk about some yogic or meditative principles. Then everything will become clear. So to begin with, we have this sort of concept of a treadmill where I want something, whether, let's say, like I want a promotion. And so I work really, 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 really hard and I get that promotion. And then for some amount of time, I feel content. But then eventually that desire comes back where like, I want more. Like I crossed, let's say 6 figures, I'm making $100,000 a year. Now I want 120, I want 140, I want 160. And you can turn to those people and you could say, hey, bro, you should be content with 100. But like, who doesn't want 120 if you're making 100, right? Who doesn't want 20 grand more, 30 grand more, 40 grand more? Like your life is just going to be better if you have a little bit more money, right? And so we don't want to give that stuff up because we have these goals and we don't want to give up our goals. On the flip side, we have these people who are like the degenerate gamers or the people who are pursuing sort of worldly pleasures, right? And these people too, it's not like you have a lot of fun playing video games, but even if you play video games for a while, like you still have to play more and you have to play more and you have to play more. And even people who, for example, when I was working with people who like have problems with disordered eating, they really do enjoy the food to a certain extent. It's just stuff gets kind of out of control. So this is the core problem, is that your mind wants something, you chase it, and then after achieving it, the joy that you get is temporary. And we wish there was a way to make that joy permanent. And so the standard yogic kind of thinking is like, okay, like give up those desires. But instead, what I'm actually going to teach y'all how to do is make that joy permanent, which is bizarre. I know, but just bear with me, okay? The first thing to understand is that the brain has not evolved for happiness or contentment. It has evolved for survival, which is precisely why it keeps things sort of temporary in terms of enjoyment. So if we sort of think about 2 different people, right? One person who is content after achieving a single thing, and someone else who is never content with achievement, which person do you think actually does better in life? So if we look at people who are at places like Harvard Medical School and investment banks and Goldman Sachs and stuff like that, when I work with these people, what I sort of found is that the way that they beat themselves up after accomplishing something or after succeeding, the way that they are dissatisfied with their success is actually an adaptive advantage in today's world. I got into HMS and now like I want to like rise, right? Now I want to be chief resident, then I want to get promoted, then I want to climb the academic ladder, I want to be chief of psychiatry. So they always want more. So the people who are never satisfied actually do better objectively in life. So this is absolutely adaptive. And let's kind of think through it. So I was working with one content creator and they were sort of telling me that like, you know, they went to a particular conference and they gave like a huge presentation and the presentation did really, really, really well. And so what happened in their mind is like the second the presentation ended, they weren't like everyone clapped and everyone seemed happy, but they were not content. Immediately what they started thinking is like, what could I have done better? And then they went to their friends and their colleagues and stuff like that. And they said, hey, like, how'd you think the presentation went? And everyone's like, it went great, man. Like you did awesome. And they're like, wait, but hold on a second. Do you think I could have done anything better? And they're like, no, you did fantastic. And in that moment, did they actually listen to their friends? Of course not. They were like, well, these people are my friends and, you know, they wouldn't tell me if I was actually doing something wrong. So despite this person working really hard and being really successful and getting lots of feedback that is like positive in nature, they were still unhappy, right? They accomplished pretty much everything they set out to accomplish and they are still unhappy. And so if we think about that, what does that result in next time around? So if they can't relax, right? Because they did a good job, because if you did a good job, then you can finally chill out. But if you convince yourself that you didn't do a good job, then you don't relax and you work even harder and you try even more. And the next presentation you give will be objectively better, right? Because instead of chilling, you figure out, okay, what can I do better? What can I do better? 5% better, 10% better, 13% better, 6% better. I need to be better. I need to be better. I need to be better. And so what we discover is that this part of our brain that is never satisfied is actually adaptive towards improvement. And the more successful you are, the more likely you are to do these kinds of things. So this is where what a lot of traditional mindfulness people will say is that, yes, you are chasing something that you will never become satisfied with. No amount of external achievement will ever make you happy, right? Happiness comes from within. And so what you need to do is give up your desire. Let go of all of your worldly ambitions, and then you will find contentment. That strategy works great if you are a monk. right? So if I'm living in the Himalayas, it makes perfect sense to give up all my desires because I'm not going to be chasing them anyway. The problem is that kind of attitude simply did not work for a lot of my patients. They were like, I don't want to give up my desires. I like my desires. I'm attached to them. So after you chase something and you achieve it, what is the reflex in your mind? The reflex in your mind is to think about what you can do better. But what we never do is reflect on what we did well, right? We never actually stop and pause and think about how did this experience go? And this is true of the hedonistic people as well. And this is what's happening in our society, is the second that you play a single video game or you watch something, let's say like on whatever short form content you like to consume, the second you're done with that content, you never stop and reflect and think about, okay, like I watched a 30-second short or a 60-second short. How do I feel about that? Did that actually help? Did that not help? We never pause and reflect. And in fact, our whole society is geared towards stopping us from pausing and reflecting, right? So the second that one short finishes, what happens? There's an immediate short that starts playing again. The second you finish one video game, there's something that says queue up right here, right? On the end game screen, the ability to queue up for the next game is actually there and ready to go. So even on the hedonistic side, anytime you do something, like when you spend money in a game, like let's say I buy a loot box, the game, like the second that I open the loot box and I don't get what I want, the game is like, hey, you can buy another one. So if we sort of stop and think about it, what technology is actually doing to us is they're trying to stop us from reflecting. And even if we go to the Sigma grind set folks, what do? They never pause to reflect. They never pause to reflect on what they did well. They're always jumping to what's next, what's next, what's next. And if we really want to conquer this, what we need to do is stop that what's next. So very simply, if you have this problem of chasing things, even achieving them, and still being unhappy with it and beating yourself up and needing to do more, what you really need to do is increase the space between completing one task and starting the next task. You need to increase the space in which you reflect. And this is sort of a more advanced yogic technique where I was working with some people who are called Aghori Babas, okay? So these are like super famous people, like you've probably seen pictures of them and stuff like that. They're kind of like these like yoga hippies that live in cemeteries. And they live in cemeteries and they like sort of like will eat things, they'll drink stuff, they'll eat meat and stuff like that. They'll drink alcohol, they'll get high, and people are like, wow, that sounds fantastic. Like they don't have jobs, they just like live in cemeteries. They also don't wear any clothes and they smear ash all over their body. So you may have seen these have got like huge dreadlocks and stuff like that. So Aghori sadhana, Ghor means fear. And the Aghori sadhus are people who lack fear. So they live this philosophy of no fear. Okay, that's means not. So Aghor means the absence of fear. And when you work with the Aghori Babas, what I kind of learned is that they sort of really reflect on their negative experiences. So how do they conquer fear? How do they go and bathe in a river where there are literally corpses floating by? And the way that they do this, they pause and they reflect about their reactions to things. And so this like Aghori sadhana is like pretty hardcore. And so what they actually do is the more that they sort of create this window between I'm going to take an action, between this action and the next action, I'm going to pause and reflect and pay attention to my reactions. And the more that they do that, the more that they start to conquer all of these different kinds of fears. And they do some pretty wild, crazy stuff that I would not recommend that you do. And so having spent time with them, I started to realize, okay, these people don't want to give this stuff up. Right? Even if you're a degenerate gamer, you don't want to give your gaming up. I didn't want to give my gaming up. If you're a Sigma grind set Chad, you don't want to give up your goals, and you don't need to. In fact, all you need to do is increase the window of reflection. Now, what does this look like? So let's go back to the person who, did a good job with their presentation. And so what we sort of find is that if you did a good job, your mind is immediately like, notice like, okay, hey, hold on a second. My mind is actually disregarding everything positive. So pause for a second after you actually achieve a goal and reflect. How do you feel about this? Was it worth all the effort that you put in? What did you sacrifice to get here? And how long does the contentment last? If you just pause to reflect afterward, you will discover that your mind will start to absorb a lot of lessons from this kind of stuff. And this also works really well on the hedonistic side. So if you stop and eat a cookie, and then you pause and you reflect and you start to ask yourself, okay, like, what was the enjoyment from this cookie? What is the price of eating this cookie? Well, before I ate the cookie, I was unhappy. As I ate the cookie, I was enjoying myself, but I started to feel guilty because I shouldn't eat cookies. And then when I was done eating a cookie, I wasn't even happy. Even though I enjoyed it, I wasn't happy because I wanted a second one. And I ate the second cookie, and then I started to feel even guiltier because the second cookie was really enjoyable. So even though I enjoyed it, there was like suffering before, guilt during, and like now I'm even kind of pissed at myself afterward. And the really interesting thing is that when you stop to pause and reflect, instead of skipping past things, your brain actually starts to learn lessons. When you don't pause and reflect on what you've actually done and how you feel about it, you end up staying stuck in the same cycle. And this is kind of funny, but this is exactly why people can play 10,000 hours of a video game and get hard stuck at bronze, right? And if you kind of think about it, how can you play the same fucking game over and over and over again and never get better? And I can guarantee you that if those people are hard stuck at bronze, what they immediately do after finishing one game is queue up for the next one. They never stop to watch a replay. They never stop and ask themselves, okay, what actually went right here or what went wrong here? Oh, the reason that I lost this game is because my teammates were noobs. Let me just queue up again. And then I lose again. Oh, my teammates are noobs. Why am I hard stuck at bronze? It's because I'm stuck in the trench. And there are so many noobs here that like I can never escape this trench. But if I buy a new account that is at diamond, then I start winning games, right? Like it's this kind of weird logic. If you stop and think about it, this explains everything. The absence of pausing and reflecting is what keeps you hard stuck. And so going back to the people that I worked with, what we sort of discovered is that when these people wanted to chase something, they didn't want to give up their desires. I said, okay, fine. Don't give up your desires. You don't want to give them up? Totally cool. You want to continue to chase stuff? Totally fine. But the moment you achieve something, pause and reflect. And what I would do once they came in after a promotion or whatever, right? Because we'd be like working on that and they had anxiety and all this kind of crap. They'd come in, they'd say, Dr. K, I did it. And I was like, great. How do you feel about it? And if I didn't ask that question, what they would do is immediately go on to other problems. I achieved it. I got the promotion, by the way, and now this thing is going on. And they never paused to reflect. And the more that I forced them in my office to pause and reflect, they were like, well, I guess it kind of worked out okay. Like, this is what I'm happy about. And then I'd kind of invite them to notice, wow, so you actually worked really hard for 6 months. You got this promotion. You come into my office and you're already talking about something else. What do you think about that? And they're like, holy crap, I never realized. And once you're able to actually pause and reflect, and what I would recommend that you do is literally ask yourself these questions. Number one, what was the buildup up to the event actually like? How did you feel before you did the thing? The second thing is, how did you feel when you were doing the thing? How did you feel after you did the thing? And the last thing is, how long did the contentment last? As you ask these 4 questions, you will start to actually walk the pathway of the Aghori Babas. These are the exact same 4 questions they ask themselves. When I find something revolting, what is my workup to the revolting thing? What is it like to experience the revolting thing? And how long does the fear last afterward? How do I feel afterward? And the more you start to reflect, something weird will start to happen. First of all, you'll start to be more content with who you are. You will stop chasing the thing quite as much. And the most bizarre thing is you will actually become better at life. Even if you choose to chase something else, you will be more tranquil when you choose to chase it. If you're chasing something else, instead of it being fulfilling some kind of void within you, you're going to be like, okay, this is a goal that I've set for myself, and my self-worth as a human being is not tied up into its success. I know it sounds kind of bizarre, but this is literally what will happen. So if y'all are struggling with chasing something, achieving it or getting it, and then that achievement not leading to any sense of contentment, and you just need more, I strongly encourage y'all to pause and reflect, because the more that you increase the window between one achievement and chasing something else, that's actually where the happiness and contentment is to be found. So give this a shot. I know it's a lot, and good luck.